folks, wanted to do a quick garden update. Number one, been pulling radishes out now for a little bit. They are huge, absolutely huge. These are some serious radishes. So they've done really well. We had radishes years ago that we grew, but nothing like this. So really happy with these. And they're heirlooms, so I'm going to let some of them go to seed. And try to grow radishes from the seeds that I save next year. Hard to even know where to start with so many of them. Those are some of the radishes. Over here, we've got onions. The onions seem to be doing pretty well. It doesn't look like they all grew. I did them from onion sets, but got a good number of them. Okay, this garden here is iceberg lettuce over on the right, you can see. And I've also got a couple of rows of carrots. Now, the carrots don't seem to have done very well. I have some, I don't know if you can really see them here or not, but there are carrot plants growing. I planted, I think, 3 rows of them. Yeah, 3 rows. And over on this end of the garden, some of them popped up. Down on this end, not too many. I've got a couple. So they didn't seem to do as well as I would have liked. Now, I've never grown carrots before, so I'm just kind of experimenting. I'm just, letting them go and seeing what happens. I may plant a second crop of carrots in a different garden. Probably once these radishes are done, I'll till that up and I'll put in a second crop of carrots there and try that out. I mean, the radishes were fully successful. Looks like the iceberg lettuce is doing well, but not sure why the carrots have been so slow and so few of them have popped up. Maybe they didn't like the soil, or maybe I overwatered them. I'm not sure, but I'll keep experimenting until I get it right with the carrots. Okay, this garden here, we've got peas. And we've also got tomatoes. These plants are doing really, really well. I've actually got tomatoes here, and I've also got them in this garden here. And as you can see, I mean, these plants are really, really healthy, really, really thriving. And one of the things I got to do this weekend is put bigger stakes. They've outgrown the stakes I had them on. That was my bad. I mean, I should have known that those smaller stakes, I mean, they were good probably for the eggplants or something, but the tomatoes were going to outgrow them, so I should have started off with better stakes. So there's our peas, there's our tomatoes, and now coming over here, we've got cucumbers, and they're doing really well. Look at those plants. Beautiful. And then I've got one of my gardens of eggplants. In the back there, those tall guys there are sunflowers. I put them in the back. The sun is actually that direction, so they won't shade the plants. Hopefully, being on that side. But those eggplants and the eggplants and cucumbers were grown from seed, as were the tomatoes. Well, actually, everything was grown from seed, but the cucumbers and tomatoes and eggplants were all started in my indoor greenhouses. So it's really, really satisfying to see the plants doing this well when you started them off from a seed while there was still snow on the freaking ground in Connecticut. So it's just kind of my way of sticking it to Connecticut. You know, if you're going to make me live here in the snow, I'm going to use greenhouses and grow some really, really cool plants. Okay, next in this garden, we've got our cantaloupe. Look at how well that plant is doing. Now I'm trying to tie the cantaloupes, train them up the trestle. I have done cantaloupes before, and one problem you have is that when the fruit's on the ground, you get worms and they rot. So either you've got to keep the fruit off the ground by putting something underneath it, or I saw that some people actually train them up a trestle. So thought I'd give that a shot this year. I'll probably do a couple of the two middle ones there. Maybe I'll do them on the ground, these guys, and then try to do the others up the trestle. Then I've got more tomatoes right there. Those tomato plants are really, really doing exceptionally well. So these were all heirloom. So I'm going to be trying to recover the seeds from all of these various plants to use next year. That's one of my preps, to basically always be ready for the next year to put my food production in order without needing to go to Home Depot for anything. If I can do that, then that will take care of a major prep of being able to actually do food production. Let me point out one other really, really cool thing here. That big beast in back of this garden are blueberries. I don't know if you can see them, but there's a lot of blueberries. So this is one of the raised gardens I'm going to fix, one of the annual raised gardens. one of the perennial raised gardens. I did the annual gardens first, the ones that, the plants that I planted this year. The perennial gardens, the asparagus, the blueberries, the raspberries, and the strawberries. The plants are well established and they're fine right now, so I was just kind of letting them do their thing until I get around to repairing those gardens. Okay, so there's our cantaloupes and other tomatoes. Now, swinging over here really quickly. Over here I have one of my herb gardens, and what I did is over on the right, that's oregano. And then over on the left, you'll see those clumps with the little flowers on them. Those are chives. Now, the oregano and the chives were already here. I just transplanted them into this herb garden. They were just kind of growing wild in the ground. So I transplanted them into this herb garden. I also put in a little bit of mint, which I know I'm going to regret. And mint is really, really cool, but it is a weed, and the roots go everywhere, and so I'm quite sure those two little mint mints I put in there are just going to take over and become a real pain. But I like mint. It's a really cool herb to grow. I got a lot of it around here. It's just kind of growing wild. And then, just because I needed the room, I had put in 6 of my pepper plants here. I know it's not really an herb, but I just put them in, and they're doing really well. So they seem to like it here with the herb garden. So, you know, hey, whoever your friends are, they're my friends if you're growing that well. And then I've got over here, I've got basil. And I've put some basil plants in various places in these raised gardens. So I've put some basil plants over with my tomatoes and everything like that. But here I've got just a little section for basil plants. And they seem to be doing really well. Okay, here in this garden, on the right-hand side, I've got bush beans, and they're doing very well. These plants are really cranking. And then over on the left-hand side, I've got 2 summer squash zucchinis. For those of you who've done zucchini, you know these plants get huge. They get really, really big. So actually, I could have probably just put 1 in over here on this side, but I put in 2. I think they'll be fine. I think they have enough room there. And then I threw in a sunflower right behind them because I like sunflowers. So, you know, again, it's on the opposite side of the garden from where the sun is. And all of my sunflowers I also put on the right side, the far side from the sun on all of these gardens. So on my right-hand gardens, as I'm looking at them now, I didn't put any sunflowers on the other side because they will shade your plants. These particular sunflowers allegedly get like 6 feet or taller. So that's the beans and the zucchini. And oh, by the way, just in case any of you guys are really, really into this and knowledgeable in companion plants and everything like that, I didn't really make any attempt to do kind of companion planting. I probably should have, and maybe next year I'll look more into it. But I was kind of in a rush to get the plants in the ground as I was building these greenhouses. So things kind of ended up where they ended up for this year. So I didn't, if you're sitting there very knowledgeable and scratching your head about what I put into these gardens, there was no real thought about companion planting here. So I'll experiment and see what worked this year, and if it worked and everything did well, then I'll do it again next year, and if not, I'll try something else. I do have lots of books on gardening now from that library used book sale, so I've got lots of reading to do as I have time, and I'll figure out what plants will work better with what plants. Over here, I've got a different variety of lettuce. This is called Tom Thumb lettuce, and those are those little plants towards the front here. And then I've got 8 more eggplants, and the eggplants started from indoors. And if you watched my video on the indoor greenhouses, I thought that the eggplants weren't doing particularly well, so I had started a second set. I ended up with a ton of eggplants. So it was just a matter of Michael not being patient. The eggplants took a lot longer to germinate than some of the other seeds, but if you look at them now, I mean, they're doing really well. These are some really, really nice, healthy plants. Because it is mid-June, what I would say is that I'm going to start the eggplants earlier next year. I'll probably start some of them like in January or February in my greenhouses. Definitely going to start some earlier, and then I'll start some later. It actually would be good to have different production cycles for the eggplants. So I'll start some really, really early, so I've got some plants when I put them in the spring that are really big, and then I'll start some more towards March like I did this year. Okay, now this was a strawberry, or is a strawberry patch that's here in my garden. I didn't do anything with this year. This is just the way it was. And we got a lot of strawberries. The strawberries are done for the year. It's over, unfortunately. Love strawberries. So what my plan is actually I'm going to expand this. I'm going to have a bigger strawberry patch for next year. But, you know, they did very well, and I didn't do anything with them. Now, another thing I mentioned was that mint is a weed, and it just like grows wild. So right here, that's mint. And it's just growing everywhere wild over here on this side of the house. So, but that's okay, I like mint. And over here is my little cornfield. And I just did one packet of heirloom corn here. It's a sweet corn. And as you can see, it's doing very well. Started it a little bit late because it just was based on when I could, you know, get to it, because I was repairing these gardens. So, yeah, starting it late just means I'm just going to get the corn a little bit later. You know, probably be, you know, August, early September or something like that. I don't know exactly how long it's going to take, but that should be okay. Over on the upper right hand side, you can see I've got a trestle there. I put in some peas just because I had some and I had a trestle. Don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know if the peas are going to make it up the trestle before the corn gets too tall and shades them, but you know, I'm just experimenting. I'm just trying things and learning, you know, what works. One of the things to consider, I was talking in a previous video about, you know, skills versus stuff and training. You know, one of the things is practicing. So you can have all kinds of gardening supplies and, you know, gardening books and everything like that, and, you know, seeds in your freezer or whatever. But if you're not actually practicing to see how this stuff works, if you ever need to do it, then you've only got one shot at getting it right and you've got no experience. That might be a problem. I don't really care so much if I screw up here because I'm learning. But what I would like to be able to do is, God forbid, if next spring, you know, there is no electric grid and things have really gone south, I want to have experience and I want to know that I can put some crops in the ground that are going to grow and, you know, have done it and, you know, have that kind of confidence that I've got these skills. So it's very important that you practice even on a small scale with your gardens. And you know, it's one thing to have all the preps in place, and that's fine, that's good, and you absolutely should do that, but you do need to at least practice on a small scale. Now, you know, what my intent is if I ever needed to, God forbid, I can ramp this up. I've got a lot more room. I can ramp up production, you know, from the scale of garden that I've got now to a much bigger scale. Now, getting back to my cornfield, off of my soapbox now, but getting back to my cornfield, this is just for this year. After the corn's done, I'm going to be turning this particular cornfield into 3 more raised gardens. Whoops, sorry about that. You know, which will be like my other raised gardens over here. You know, they'll be leveled and probably for annuals. And then my cornfield, actually I've got, oh, by the way, those are grapes right there on that fence. I have a lot more area that I can put in my cornfield. You know, my actual permanent cornfield. I just didn't have enough time to do it this year. There's my composter. Very excited about that. That's a project that turned out very well. And so that's an update on how things are doing now and a few of my future plans. Thank you very much for watching.